Hello and welcome to Supt Scoop. I am your host and the proud superintendent of the Mount Vernon City School District, Dr. Kenneth R. Hamilton. We have a great show lined up for you today. Joining me will be our Standards Administrator for Technology, Mr. Joe McGrath, and he's here to talk about our upcoming rezoning effort that will enable us to implement the next phase of the 2020 vision. I am also excited to welcome some of our My Brother's Keeper Fellows to talk about an important service project that they've recently completed. We will also be joined by Mount Vernon High School senior Destiny Caccuito, who has taken full advantage of all the great programs offered here at Mount Vernon High School. She's going to talk about what her experience has been like here in Mount Vernon and what her plans are after graduation. But first, let's take a look at some news, things that are happening around the district. On February 27th, surrounded by family and friends, Mount Vernon High School senior Jana Sharp signed her national letter of intent to compete in track and field at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Jana has competed on the Mount Vernon team all 4 years of her high school career. The signing ceremony included remarks from family, friends, coaches, and teachers. She is currently ranked number 10 in the U.S. and number 3 in New York State for women's high school weight throw. She has their furthest hammer throw and weight throw in Section 1. She said her only goal now is to beat the school records. On behalf of the Mount Vernon City School District and the Board of Trustees, I want to wish Jana all the best in her academic and athletic pursuits. I look forward to having her on an upcoming episode of Supt Scoop to reflect on her time here in Mount Vernon. February was Black History Month, and while all of our schools commemorated the month in their own way, the students at homeschool did so in a rather unique and fun way through a living history wax museum. Fifth graders from Melissa White Harris's and Tiffany Sanzavera classes were given the opportunity to research an African American in history who made a significant contribution to society. From their research, students were tasked with committing facts to memory and taking on their historical figures persona for the culminating event, a living history museum. On the morning of February 28th, students gathered in the second floor hallway to become their character. Each of the students had a circular piece of paper representing a start button on the desk in front of them. When a parent, visitor, or another student pushed the button, the students brought the historical character to life, reciting interesting facts about their particular character. Aaliyah Spence chose to research Hattie McDaniel, the first African-American actress. Daniel Douglas brought musician Michael Jackson back to life. It was a great event. And finally, under the direction of Dr. Evelyn Collins, students from the Mount Vernon Performing and Visual Arts Magnet Program took the stage to perform August Wilson's play, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the weekend of March 1st at Nellie Thornton High School, located at 121 South 6th Avenue in Mount Vernon. Set in Chicago in the 1920s, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom depicts themes of religion, sexism, and the exploitation of African Americans in the music industry. The play is based on the real-life blues artist Ma Rainey and is a required reading for the 12th grade ELA curriculum across New York State, thus serving as a way to educate students about the culture and history of the time. This is the first non-musical performance by Dr. Collins that she has directed with the students since the program began under her direction in 2015. Last year, she and her students presented The Lion King to critical acclaim. More than 4,000 patrons were in attendance for the run of the musical. The production was staged in the newly renovated 200-seat experimental theater at Nellie Thornton High School and was the first since the Performing Arts Visual Magnet Program took up permanent residence in its new home at Thornton High School. The renovated Woods Auditorium will seat 1,600 people and open on June 8, 2019 with the musical production of The Wiz. We will be right back with our first guest, Mount Vernon High School senior Destiny Caccuito. Stay tuned. Joining me now is Mount Vernon High School student Destiny Caccuito. Welcome to the show, Destiny.
Glad to be here.
So, Destiny, how long have you been in the district?
Well, I have been here since elementary school.
And what are your plans now after high school?
After high school, I'm planning on attending college for 4 years, and then after, hopefully, law school for another 3.
So let's back up a little bit, Destiny, and talk to me a little bit about your involvement in AVID. I understand you were an AVID student. How long have you been in AVID?
4 years.
and describe for our viewing audience what AVID is about and how it has helped you.
Well, AVID stands for Advanced via Individual Determination. It is basically a college preparatory class where you spend 4 years with the same teacher and they explain to you the process of tutorology and the whole college admissions process and everything you have to go through in order to get to the next step.
So do you think AVID has had an impact on your college readiness?
Of course, yes.
And how so?
I feel like I'm more organized. I know where I'm going from now. I personally feel like they took the time to help me, set me aside and explain to me the whole process, and I feel more comfortable now with what I need to do.
So one of the goals for the AVID program is to help prepare those students who are middle of the road students to go into advanced level courses. How many advanced level courses have you taken?
I have taken 4 so far.
And do you think that you would have still taken those courses if it hadn't been for AVID?
I don't believe so.
And how has AVID helped you prepare for those advanced level courses?
Well, AVID has helped me focus more on my academics. I'm able to be more organized with myself and time manage. So if I need to meet a certain deadline, I'll be able to because I have all of my notes ready. Everything is in a specific order in my binder. Everything's there for me.
So are these skills in AVID skills that you will take with you to college?
Yes, of course.
And tell me what colleges you've applied to and how that essay part, because that's the part that kids have the hardest time with, is writing those essays. How has AVID helped you and the AVID counselors helped you with the application process?
Well, so far I have applied to multiple schools, just to name a few. Fordham, I've applied to many CUNY schools, Iona. I've got all of my acceptance back except for CUNY's, but I believe that AVID has helped me because our teacher has set us aside and given us a certain deadline to finish our essay. And our counselor would come in and occasionally help us with the process, and she would explain to us what the essay needed to be. And she just encouraged us to push it, and we met our deadline and we were able to all complete our essays as a class.
So what's your preferred college?
My preferred college would be John Jay, Criminal Justice.
And have you heard from them yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, what advice would you have for other students, underclassmen, for example, who are coming up through Mount Vernon or any of our high schools in the district in terms of study habits that you may have developed or self-discipline that you may have developed that would put them on the right track for college and career?
Well, I believe that students should have a certain mindset where education should be the most important thing for you. You can't just come to school and feel like, I don't want to be here every day. You should have a purpose when you come to school. You should know that you're getting this done for your future, not just because you have to.
And do you feel that you are well prepared for college and pursuing your passion for law?
Yes, I feel like AVID and Mount Vernon High School as a whole has really pushed me forward into the right direction.
Well, thank you so much for being on Supt Scoop. I'm very proud of you. I think you are a fine representation of our district and our school, and I wish you much success. And let me know as soon as you hear from your college of choice.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be right back for another segment of Supt Scoop. Back in March of 2016, the Mount Vernon community overwhelmingly supported the 2020 vision and the bond referendum needed to implement that plan. Today, 3 years later, the 2020 vision is coming into focus and projects are nearing completion across the district. A key part of the vision included neighborhood pre-K 8th grade school configuration. This fall, we will begin the next phase of that transition. In order to meet this goal, we will need to rezone several school zones to accommodate the inclusion of 7th and 8th graders, as well as pre-K students into our schools. Joining me now is our Director of Technology, Joe McGrath, to outline the plan recently approved by the Board of Trustees. Welcome to the show, Mr. Joe McGrath.
Thank you, Superintendent. It's a pleasure to be here. This process, as you're aware, started when the voters approved this wonderful vision 3 years ago, and since that time there's multiple steps to make sure that we did this in the most effective way, starting with the re-registration process, cleaning up our data, reviewing, meeting with principals, architects, administrators. The amount of time that we spent on preparing this cannot be overstated. Having said that, the board recently approved a rezoning plan, which is actually a very conservative minor redistricting. There will be a part 2 to this, which will come once the construction is completed. But for right now, we're just talking about moving the line from Pennington down between Pennington and Columbus and between Pennington and Lincoln. So it's really only a few blocks that are actually affected by this current rezone.
So one of the things that we were trying to do in this plan was to minimize the impact. Redistricting is uncomfortable. People get up in arms about redistricting, and that's not specific to Mount Vernon. That's all across the nation where there has been rezoning and redistricting. I've already received emails from some parents who are potentially affected. They don't even know if they're affected yet because we haven't put this plan out there completely. What do we have in place to make sure that parents are getting the right information as soon as possible so that they can make their appropriate plans for the upcoming school year?
So the school year doesn't start until September, but letters are actually going out this month to parents to inform them of what's happening, what the board recently approved. So they'll have several months to really decide what they want to do and how to proceed forward.
And talk specifically about which areas, which encatchments would be directly affected.
Sure. So at Lincoln School, we had the previous boundary between Lincoln and Pennington was at Grand Street, East Grand Street. That boundary has been moved down to Primrose. So anybody that's on Primrose North that previously had gone to Lincoln will now be going to Pennington.
So Pennington's addition, the additional classrooms that we added there, we knew going in that we would need to rezone in order to populate that, and that was designed very specifically to take some of the pressure off of Lincoln because those classrooms were overcrowded and there were spaces that were being utilized that were not ideal for classroom space, like the library, for instance, and even some small group instruction and configurations that are not ideal. How does this plan address that?
So the construction always anticipated a rezoning. That was always part of the plan. I mean, keep in mind that we're going from a K-6, which is 7 grades, to a pre-K 8, which is 10 grades. So it's almost a 40% increase in the number of grades in each school. And the only way to accomplish that is to look at rezoning and look at populations. So the plan when they built the addition of Pennington involved that, so, okay, how are we going to address all of these new needs with these new grade configurations? And so there's this rezoning fits perfectly. It was part of the original plan when this was conceived.
So I want to give you a chance to finish talking about the specific areas that will be impacted. So Grand Avenue in particular, take it from there.
So Grand has always been the boundary between Pennington and Columbus and Pennington and Lincoln School. That boundary has been moved south so that at Columbus School, that boundary will now be William Street. So students that are on William Street and north will now be attending Pennington, and students that are on Primrose Street and north will now be attending Pennington.
And about how many students and families will be impacted?
So all in all, there's 120 students that will be affected, and that obviously is between less than 120 families, but about 60 from each school will be going over to Pennington.
So there's been several revisions to this plan because we were again trying to capture the smallest number of students possible. So there's this issue that we've been trying to maintain balance between impacting parents and then being consistent with our promise to reduce some of the pressure on our elementary schools that are bursting at the seams, and also delivering on the configuration of our district to pre-K 8 schools, which our community has been very, very adamant about having in place, and this plan captures that. But more specifically, there's this notion that there's room in our schools, and while there is room in our secondary schools, our elementary classrooms really are quite overcrowded. How does this alleviate that capacity issue at our elementary schools?
So it's an excellent question, because when we were looking at this and how to go from a K-6 to a pre-K to 8, we very quickly ran into capacity issues. So we actually used special software that mapped out and looked at not only which students were in what grade and where they went, but are they special needs students? Are they bilingual students? Do they have any special requirements for space? And so we had to look at this amazing amount of data and try and figure out how to make the best situation for our students. When we got down to it and we really looked closely, we then had to go back and meet with the architects who had to go room by room and actually measure square footage to figure out, did we actually have enough using state regulations in terms of, are we allowing, we don't want to create a situation where we have too many students in a classroom. We don't want to create overcrowded classrooms. So we had to take a very scientific, measured approach to this. And when we did that, we discovered very quickly that we don't have the room that we anticipated that we might have, which required us to go back, take a second look at this, and really come back with several different scenarios before we finally came up with the one that the board eventually approved.
So when we think about the future of the district, and you already alluded to the fact that there will ultimately be another rezoning, but there are a couple of factors that play into this. One thing that I really wanted to be clear about is that we were trying not to split up siblings because of special programming or particular grades. How does this plan make sure that we are sensitive to making sure that siblings are able to stay together?
So this plan entails two things. One, students that are already special permission in a school for various different reasons will continue to be so. So they are not affected by the rezone at all. Students that are already attending for various reasons, a lot of that is keeping siblings together. Those students are not affected, they're grandfathered in. So that's the first thing we wanted to do is, again, minimize, as you said, the impact to families and students. The other thing is that since we're doing it by geographic location, all the students that live in that household would get rezoned.
And what provisions have we put in place to make sure that as parents come forward and begin to express their concerns, what provisions are in place to make sure that we have a protocol that will ensure consistency in the implementation of this reconfiguration?
So again, this is a very measured approach. So it really deals with drawing very discrete lines in terms of rezoning. So parents are not, nobody's being singled out. And then there are special situations, and there are people that have gone to the Office of Student Services and said, here's my situation, and they're very receptive to that kind of conversation. At the end of the day, though, it's a conversation between the district and the parent to figure out the best approach.
And I have to commend your office and Student Services in particular for your work in pulling this together. We're going to load this plan up on our website so that people can really see how they're impacted. Are addresses, specific addresses available so that a parent could go on and access, am I directly impacted, or is that only communicated through the written correspondence that we're preparing?
So great question, because I haven't told you this yet, but we have a new tool that we're actually launching next week where parents can go on and put their address in and do a search to see where their zone school is.
Awesome. So if parents have specific questions about how or if they will be impacted by the rezoning, how can they contact someone in the office?
So we're going to have a plethora of information on the website around this. So hopefully parents will be able to get their information directly from the website. But if it doesn't answer their questions for any reason, we'll have a special email set up just for them at rezone@mountVernonCSD.org. And again, that email address will also be published on the website.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for an incredible effort to make this as seamless as possible and minimize the impact. And kudos to you and the Office of Student Services to make this happen. I think at the end, our community is going to be very, very pleased. We are, in fact, creating neighborhood schools, which reconfigures them to pre-K-8, and this is the final phase of that. Essentially, once we bring the new school on site, there will be another redistricting, and can we just talk a minute before you leave about what the next rezoning might look like when the new elementary school is on site?
Sure, sure. I first want to just say thank you for mentioning that all the people that have been involved with this. I mean, there's been so many people, principals, school leaders, facilities, the curriculum people, the architects. It is such a, certainly Student Services is a huge role in this, guidance is a huge role in this. The number of people that we've kind of got this information from, and we're going to continue to work with on the next leg of it. What'll be interesting too about the next leg is there's a lot more moving parts because we'll have another school coming online. We're also going to be looking at some of the new construction that's happening in the city and trying to anticipate the best rezoning that will require us to rezone minimally moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I think at the end, like I said, our community is going to be extremely proud of what Mount Vernon will look like in 2020 and beyond. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now are two of our impressive MBK fellows, Juan Franco and Budhi. These two students just completed an extraordinary service project as part of their requirements for the MBK initiative. So Juan, why don't you begin by telling us about the project, and then Demario, I'm going to ask you to talk about your findings.
Okay, so MBK wanted us to find an issue that we saw in our neighborhoods and then decide how to act on it. Me and Demario noticed that there was obviously an issue with the north side and south side dealing with food. So me and Demario decided then to go investigate certain places, obviously like Food Bazaar here. We also went to Pelham, New Rochelle, Bronxville, and saw that there was clear differences between them, especially with the prices, the variety of the food, and also the quality of it. So with that said, we decided to change it up a little bit now and here in Mount Vernon and see what we can do.
And what were your findings, Demario?
Well, initially, we wanted to make a comparison. Well, going to some districts or communities that have a higher income or with people that with less diversity of people of color, we noticed that their food prices tend to be very high, naturally because people there generally make a lot more money. And naturally here, like to buy a Food Bazaar, you could buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes for roughly $2.99, whereas it would be much highly priced in other communities. And we noticed with those same produce, they were damaged to a great amount. Like the product and quality and the grade was much lower, because generally in lower income communities, places like Food Bazaar, Stop and Shop tend to buy lower grade produce that they know people of this community can afford. And based off some information that we found from like Google Scholar, journals and notes there, we know that education and brain productivity, it has a high link towards the nutrition you have. Generally, you need brain food. You need to eat well to work well.
How did this project get on your radar? Of all the things you could have selected as a project, what made you pick this particular project and to do this comparison?
So in my case personally, I noticed that my mom does not buy food in Mount Vernon. She always has to go out to New Rochelle to get vegetables and go to Costco to buy anything else. So I said, Mom, why don't you go to any local places? And we actually have gone to some, and I've noticed the differences, and I was like, okay, yeah, I see the issue. Also, with Demario's case as well, he actually buys in Mount Vernon, and he also has seen many occasions the differences in the quality. So we decided that it was a better idea now to start changing it, because I remember it being a young age, school lunch wasn't my thing, and literally buying food in Mount Vernon wasn't my thing, if anything. So we thought that changing that right now would get better for those younger than us, especially for my younger brother who happens to be in Mount Vernon now, because the school lunches are getting better as well.
Demario, what do you think your findings mean in terms of what happens in minority communities, and would your findings in your mind be applicable in other communities outside of Mount Vernon?
Well, based off our findings, I can tell there definitely is a bit of a race problem or a stigmatization for communities like ours. You generally don't find these types of problems in other more affluent communities with the demographic not as recognizable as us. And I definitely can believe that this can be applied to other different communities very similar to ours, because oddly enough, the Westchester community is one of the most richest counties in the United States. Yet Mount Vernon, our community, is one of the poorest in this county. So you can definitely compare something like that to other districts and communities around the United States that are a mirror reflection of ours.
Were you met with any kind of resistance when you were going into these bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets to gather your findings by owners or shopkeepers?
No, actually, they were okay with it, mostly because it was as if we were normal customers, and we only took pictures in big stores like Stop and Shop and Food Bazaar, but local bodegas, we didn't take pictures because we knew we would definitely get an issue there.
And how long did it take you to do the project, by the way?
We started it during the summer with the plans of what we were going to go by, and then starting October, I'd say, we started acting on it.
So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little more about MBK. What does being a fellow for MBK mean specifically?
Being an MBK fellow means that you know that there's more people out there like you. First time when I went there, I didn't know I was getting I was becoming a part of the program or anything. I was expecting something normal, like, oh, everybody's just gonna come here, we're not gonna come back again, like, it wasn't that important. But while being there, I noticed that not everybody felt like the same type of person. There was something different about each person that I liked. And then also when we went to talk about our service project, hearing their projects and how they felt about it really opened my mind to it. So being a part of MBK made me realize that there's other people out there, they just have an opinion like me and they needed somewhere to let it out. And luckily MBK has given us that opportunity.
Awesome. And Demario, what has being a part of MBK meant for you?
Well, being a part of MBK, for me, it means that I have a chance to be a much better person than I already am. MBK, naturally, the initiative is for young men of color to apply accountability skills, leadership skills, all types of skills that you will need in the real adult world. And I'm happy that I'm able to have access to these and have such supportive people like our mentors or anyone else supporting us on the project. And the idea that this is actually a lifetime thing, that you don't become a fellow and it's just there in high school and that's it. This is something that sticks with us forever, throughout our whole entire careers as students, throughout adulthood, and one day we might be able to be mentors for other people that are younger than us. And that just makes me very happy. I'm just elated to know that I can support and help other people, because naturally people of color are at a huge challenge in the world. So it's just very great. I'm just very happy, to be honest.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm very proud of you as individuals, your representation of our district, and more importantly, your service project and what the implications are. And that you even thought enough to select a service project like this that has, I think, real significant implications for our community. And hopefully, as people view this and hear other presentations that you've made about your project, they can make better choices about where they buy their products and how they spend their money. So thank you so much for being on our show today and for your contribution as MBK Fellows. And shout out to Brother Muhammad also for his leadership and mentoring as well. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for being a part of our viewing audience. I'm Ken Hamilton, Superintendent of Mount Vernon City School District, signing out, and we'll see you next time on Supt Scoop.